Democracy is not in decline. Maybe. Welcome to Law and Society. Please subscribe and let's talk about this. So, at the outset, I'm going to do something that I haven't done before, which is provide you with the contact information of US Senator from South Dakota, John Thune. And I'll be I, I'm doing that because Senator Thune is going to be the next majority leader of the Senate. And as I talk about today's talk, it'll become important and you'll know why I am giving you this information. So you can go on to THUNE, not MN, THUNE.senate.gov to get on his website. But if you don't want to get to his website, his Washington, D.C. phone number is 202 224 2321. His Sioux Falls office phone number is 605 334 9596. His Aberdeen office number is 605 225 8823. And his Rapid City number is 605 348 7551. Most importantly, remember the Washington, D.C. number, jot it down, is 202 224 2321. Now, I wanted to give you that information, and you can go on Google and check who is your senator and whether it be Republican or Democratic, get their phone number and have it on hand, and I'll explain in a bit why. So, I said democracy is not in decline. We're not, democracies like the United States that have been um, continuously running for nearly 250 years just doesn't go away overnight. We're going to have elections in February for local and state. We're going to have elections coming up in 2026. So you cannot say democracy is in decline because we still are a constitutional republic that is governed by the rule of law and the Constitution. To a great extent, that remains true. But what is really alarming is that we are now witnessing an erosion of that democratic norm. So I don't know if it can be called as in decline as much as I would say it would be under attack or in crisis, because autocracy, oligarchy, and authoritarianism is definitely on the rise. And we see that in this American election. You know, systems of systems of government like democracies don't end in one day. You know, when failing and becoming something else and becoming authoritarian, the shift happens quickly because it's sort of a shock and awe situation where the authoritarian takes power and does a set of extremist things to appease his uh, base, and then it gives it time to sort of settle in. So at this point, what is standing before us is Donald Trump's confirmations for his various cabinet positions, various ambassador nominations, and FBI director. And we have seen that Donald Trump has given positions of ambassadorship to relatives. He has given billionaires who have funded his re-election campaign and who continue to give him money in high positions in um, uh, Department of Navy and other uh, consumer protection. Was that the last thing? Was I think small business or one of so these other departments um, are getting people who've paid him are getting these posts without any sort of experience. And then we have the really bad people like Pete Hegseth and Tulsi Gabbard and Kash Patel for defense director of national intelligence and FBI director, respectively, that are just bad calls for our country, that are national security threats. And RFK Jr. as well, because health and human services is quite important because it is about the people of the United States and our well being. So we may see this sort of a shock and awe situation when Donald takes office. And when the country, but however, after the shock and awe, the country will have time to recover. And we will have the opportunity to push back in 2026. Until then, though, for the next 2 years, we are a single party government. As I've said, that both houses of Congress are red, the Supreme Court is conservative, and there's Donald Trump in the White House. So the next 4 years, the GOP is responsible for what happens in this country. We know that right now, the price of food is down, the price of gasoline has tamed. We know that there's stability in the markets, but we don't know if that will remain when Donald Trump gets to office, because Donald Trump's agenda is extreme. And we are seeing that with the people he's putting in his administration or trying to push through. And the reason why I say a lot depends on the Senate, and the reason why I say that, um, you know, keep Senator Thune's phone number with you is because Senator Thune is going to be the majority leader of the Senate, which is going to be a red Senate. And that Senate is going to be confirming Donald Trump's nominations and appointments. It is important for John Thune, Senator Thune, to know from the people of the United States, the whole country, because while he may be senator from South Dakota, he is now taking the responsibility of being the Senate majority leader. And therefore, the responsibility falls on him to guide the advice and consent power and responsibility of the Senate and not give that up by adjourning the Senate and giving Donald Trump the chance to have recess appointments. Because, first of all, they're going to come back and have to make actual appointments anyway after a certain point in time. But the first 7 or 8 months will be that shock and awe. If John Thune does that, if the Senate does that, then I sadly will say that democracy is slipping towards a decline. Ours is. Mind you, South Korea's, whom we helped form their democracy 50 odd years ago, is holding the president accountable for uh, declaring martial law, and his operatives are being impeached, and we don't know what's going to happen with him yet. He's going to get impeached, whether actually there will be a conviction and then removal from office. I don't know how their government works, but they are working at a breakneck speed. And it is just amazing to see that we weren't able to hold an insurrectionist accountable nor disqualify him under the 14th Amendment, Section 3. And we are now in a place that that person has the levers of power. So the next 4 years will be a test of the resilience of our Constitution and American democracy. And as I just said, Senate is the only governmental body that can check Donald Trump's extreme positions and being able to implement them. And that, I mentioned uh, Hegseth, Gabbard, and Patel, but JFK's is just as radical. Kristi Noem, God knows what experience she has being the chief of, the secretary of the Department of Homeland Security after being the governor of South Carolina. I don't know what Marco Rubio will do with being a diplomat in an era where Donald Trump is becoming more and more isolationist. And that's his posture to the world because, it's going to be difficult to see the United States helping out Ukraine when the United States is going to have a hard time dealing with what we will be handling with Donald Trump's cabinet and other positions and his positions on immigration and the economy and climate change and energy production. So we now know that SCOTUS is the only governmental body that can check Donald Trump's actions and that are not part, and very exclusively for that are not part of POTUS's official or outer perimeter duties, which is the penumbral duties after the explicit duties that are mentioned in the Constitution, like pardons and appointments. So the Senate has check on the appointments and nominations, and only SCOTUS and the federal judiciary has some sort of a review status for how far Donald Trump can stretch the power of the presidency with their immunity ruling in Trump v. United States. We know the House of Representatives is subjugated and will comply with Donald Trump by way of Mike Johnson. And, it's a thin majority. If there are enough people who don't want extreme legislation to pass through from the GOP, can vote with Democrats to not have that legislation passed. But the thing is, people who stand up to Donald Trump now in the Republican Party are axed from the party to begin with. So the question is, maybe they want to go from Republican to independent, and then, that's just me wishful thinking. Now, Donald Trump will have a loyalist cabinet, and they will obey his orders without question. And, wouldn't it be nice if there was this turn of events and JD Vance convinced Donald Trump's sycophantic cabinet with more promises of more tax cuts and more gifts and more powers that they would turn on Donald Trump and have, remove Donald Trump before the first year of his reign is over. But that's just me wishful thinking. And but what is more likely to happen is that his loyalist cabinet will carry out his orders without question, and the fallout will not be pleasant, and we will be left with examples of mass deportations and images like wrangling families all at a time and deporting them, whether or not one or two of them are American citizens by birth, whether or not, I mean, Stephen Miller has gone as far as to say that they will deport naturalized citizens. So that's also it's so bizarre to me. And people who are here legally and in the workforce, and most of them work in the workforce of food production. You're talking about reducing the price of eggs and price of tomatoes. 80% of or 70% of America's tomatoes comes from Mexico. And Donald Trump's tariffs is the way that he wants to go, with Mexico and Canada our closest neighbors and biggest trading partners. So there's going to be mass deportations, and there may be military on civilian streets. There will be economic instability and volatility because of these trade wars There will be environmental catastrophes with Donald Trump's indiscriminate drilling. I mean, there will be, there could be a reduction in the price of gasoline, and with that, other prices. But that offset will be offset by the rise in prices from the tariffs and the rise in prices because people are being mass deported who work in a sector of our um, uh, workforce that is in food production. Most of that crowd, most of the people who are here on temporary visas, who are here on work visas, a lot of them, and that then there, I don't know what the numbers is of undocumented, but even undocumented workers who have been here for decades and decades and worked in our fields and fed us and should be given a path to citizenship instead of sent back to the country of origin where they haven't been for decades and decades. And the inhumanity of that is sort of just confounding. We're also going to see a gutting of the federal government of career professionals and replacing them with unqualified loyalists. This weakens America from within. It sets us up for failure. His loyalists and his policies are setting us up for failure. We're having, before even Donald Trump comes on, this fracturing where United Kingdom is saying we're not going to choose between America and Europe. Of course, there's going to be a fracturing between Europe and the United States when the United States, under Donald Trump's rule, goes with Vladimir Putin and calls for some sort of a appeasement by ceding territory and giving essentially Putin what he wants for a ceasefire that will not last, instead of what Ukraine deserves, which is their sovereignty returned. And that's all Ukraine wants. Remember, Russia invaded Ukraine. Ukraine didn't invade Russia. That's something that we as Americans have to remember. So, Donald Trump is building this autocratic oligarchy that does not know how to govern and does not want to. Building an autocratic oligarchy that will gain wealth and power for extremely rich few while draining money from the working people, working Americans, many of whom voted for Donald Trump, by the way. They will not be happy because the price of eggs aren't coming down. And even if they do come down for a little while, they're not going to stay there with Donald Trump's trade wars and mass deportations. So I shudder to think where we are going today. And I, the last thing I'll leave you with is the demise of corporate media, and with it, a compromising position for the fourth estate. Independent media like Brian Tyler Cohen, independent media like Midas Touch, independent media on the other side, like the Drudge Report, they are holding on to some sort of reality. But there are many more disinformation outlets out there. And we have the habit as human beings. My tennis coach in high school used to say, the reason why we remind you to always follow through when you're hitting a ball is because human beings have an inclination to be lazy instead of doing the work of following through. It was just that simple. And if you didn't follow through, the ball didn't go across to the net, and you weren't playing it properly. We are now in a position with the media where corporate media has sort of succumbed to compliance and money and access and convenience. And we are driven into that world of convenience where, we would believe people who we trust instead of doing the work of checking out all the resources. of following through. And it's important to do the work when you say I'm researching on my own, to go from perspective to perspective. Go and listen to Joe Rogan, which I sometimes try to listen to as much of Donald Trump, what he's saying, and to understand what he's reaching out to. What are the core fears and vulnerabilities that he's harnessing? Because a lot of Trump voters voted for Bernie Sanders as well. So the populist movement, which is going to be very, very disappointed when they see that Donald Trump's government is not a populist government, but a government that is oligarchical and autocratic, when there are protests and crackdowns, when there's these price gouging, we realize that when we come to the media, we have to be vigilant. Yeah, listen to MSNBC, go to Midas Touch, go to the Drudge Report, check out some other sources like the Wall Street Journal, even Fox and CNN and MSNBC and NBC, and then come to a consensus of what is being said. Understand it from what every perspective that you can, and follow through on the work, because the fourth estate is in crisis, much more so than the democracy is. And if the fourth estate falls, and if engaged citizens and independent media can't hold it up because of the era that we're in, that is this information digital ecosystem where immediate, near immediate access and convenience is everything, where you get news from something you trust or somebody you trust instead of going out there and doing the work yourself, then we are in trouble as a country, because information is going to get snuffed out by disinformation. And that is what happened in the 2024 election. And as I've said many times, was one of the big reasons why Donald Trump won, is because the Republicans and Donald Trump and MAGA won the disinformation war. And we have to win the information war. So use information and truth and adherence to the truth as a weapon as you go on and defend democracy and the truth, and report back to your fellow citizens the truth of what is being of what is happening, not just one perspective of it from one person that you trust, but all of it, not just one newsletter. Get newsletters from all different sources. I talk about Midas Touch a lot because they're a pro democracy channel, but there are other sources that I look at as well. I watch NBC, MSNBC, CNN. I read the Drudge Report. I check out Fox News clips, the whole clips, not just the ones that certain liberal accounts will share with you. And then I make a consensus in my head. And so our free press has now cowered and obeyed in advance in this ecosphere that is burdened with oligarchical money. Jeff Bezos, speaking good of Donald Trump, because the first administration, Jeff Bezos lost a $10 billion government contract because of, being independent thinking. And that is more important for somebody who is worth 150 plus $billion than, remaining true to the free press and allowing the Washington Post to do what it does, even if it costs him and his company a few $1 billion. He started his company by accepting loss, by providing at a cheaper cost to people. So why doesn't he approach politics from the perspective of remaining true to the journalistic integrity of the Washington Post and taking a loss, but gaining the faith of the people? The logic remains the same. Why wouldn't Jeff Bezos look at it that way? Because 10 billion is really that much. Your personal net worth is 150 plus $1 billion. How much more money do you really need? you know, like people like Elon Musk, Peter Thiel, a lot of them who have helped Donald Trump, um, Mark Zuckerberg going there paying homage in Mar-a-Lago, is is so sycophantic and so dangerous because these are huge information outlets, and now they are obeying in advance to this person coming in who has a flagrant disregard for the rule of law, who under law still is a convicted felon, and the judge hasn't ruled on whether to dismiss the case in New York or not, although the federal cases are dismissed. And we don't know what's happening with the Georgia case or what will happen with it. But, he's put brakes on all of those. So for Americans to be able to withstand this barrage that's coming our way, we need to be informed, and we need to inform ourselves from various sources and being able to formulate the context, form, and content of, and I'm using that from Trump v. USA because, when you're looking at immunity, you look at the content, form, and context of, so therefore, in a way, they're saying that, yeah, we look at the motive, but we look about it in sort of a roundabout way. But I just wanted to, bring that up. Anyway, but the point is for us to be able to process information ourselves, we have a responsibility, and then we have a responsibility to come and talk about it to as many people as we can. And you know I have been called spam, and I have been called many things without, and I've been blocked by people without even going to my channel, or interacting with what I have to say, and that all of that comes with creating content online. All I have to say is I do my due diligence when I'm talking about an issue. And I don't come out and talk about every single issue every few hours by, populating my account with more videos and more airtime. But when I come out and talk about these positions, I have looked at it from more than one perspective. And I implore you to as well. If you come here and if you listen to me, I'm thankful for it. What I also would like very much for you to do is go onto other people's engaged citizenry or to big names like Katie Couric, Midas Touch, The Bulwark, uh, uh, Al Franken's show. There are so many other shows that you can listen to. In the Drudge Report, uh, go and listen to Fox News for context as well. All of this put together, we have a responsibility now to maintain our democracy. 2026 is coming, and that we'll have another federal election, and we'll see which direction we go. And then in 2028 will be the presidential election. Donald Trump won't be on the ticket unless somehow he finds a way to do away with the 22nd Amendment without another amendment, because that's the only way you can undo the Constitution. And he simply doesn't have the votes to do it. So I don't know how he would do that. I don't think he can. So he won't be president, but we'll have to see whether it's going to be a continuation of Trumpism through Vance, or if Democrats get to the real populist core message of making the cost of living livable. I mean, and the money that you earn livable, so that you are not poor in the country anymore. So be a populist leader who comes out and says that no, we need to address the cost of living. We need to address inflation. And we need to do that because the people need to have enough money in their banks so they don't worry every day how to get by. And that's what real populists do. And that's what a real populist cabinet would do. And that's in many ways what President Biden and Vice President Harris did from 2021 to 2023 when they had the majority in Congress. So, with that said, thank you so much for listening. And do like and subscribe. If you have any questions, please leave it in the comment box. And I implore you to check out as many sources of news and information as you can so you can have the perspectives that you need to know the truth, because we are entering an unprecedented time when we are under assault. We're not in decline as a democracy, but democracy is definitely under assault and to a level in crisis. With that said, thank you.